Hello, everybody. Welcome to Worst Case Macchiato. It was episode 17. And today, Madison's going to cover a case. But before she gets into that, I just want to, I don't know if you've been kind of keeping up with it, Madison, but there's actually an update on the Delphi murder case.
I have not been keeping up with it.
Yeah, so I have this app and it's called Crime Door, and it gives me updates on cases that I've looked at on there. So it's pretty cool.
Okay.
But just as a reminder, I don't remember what episode exactly, but I think it was probably 7 episodes ago roughly. Madison covered the Delphi murder cases in Indiana. And at the end of that case that Madison covered, Richard Allen was questioned by detectives after Abby Williams and Libby German's bodies were discovered in 2017, but he wasn't arrested until 2022. And according to prosecutors, Allen confessed 5 or 6 times that he killed the girls, but his attorneys say that the statements can't be trusted due to his mental state, and the jury selection was set for January 8th, 2024, so in the next couple months. But the new update started in September of this year, Madison. Andrew Baldwin and Bradley Rozzi, which is the attorneys representing Richard Allen, who is the only suspect in custody for the Delphi murders to begin with. His lawyers stated that Abby Williams and Libby German were allegedly sacrificed in a bloody ritual by individuals associated with a pagan religion, and they're believed to be white nationalists, so they're blaming it on witchcraft. So,
Fair.
yeah, very reliable sources. And according to court documents, sticks were arranged on the girls' bodies and a letter was painted on a nearby tree in blood. And the court documents also identified 4 individuals as suspects of the pagan religion, but none have been arrested or charged in regards to the case. So that's what they believe. That's why they're saying that they believe it was a pagan ritual instead of Allen actually killing. So just a couple weeks ago, in mid-November, Superior Judge Fran Gull, which is the judge appointed to the Delphi murders case, released a transcript of a meeting in her chambers from a month prior. This transcript revealed that Gull had plans to remove Baldwin and Rozzi from the case prior to her announcement in a court hearing in October that the lawyers had voluntarily withdrawn. So Allen and his defense team were scheduled to make a court appearance in mid-October. However, Allen and the defense team were not present when the judge began proceedings. And then just a few days after the proceedings, Rozzi filed several court documents asking for Judge Gull to be thrown out, claiming that she ambushed and coerced the defense team into dropping out in a secret meeting in her chambers prior to the court hearing. And this was the reason why Gull had to release the transcript of the meeting to the Superior Court to analyze it for coercion. So among the issues addressed during the meeting was an evidence leak from Baldwin's office, where a former employee had gone into his office, took pictures of sensitive crime scene evidence, and released the photos to the public through Facebook. And it was in a public announcement, it was released that the evidence that was leaked on Facebook was pictures of Abby Williams and Libby Germain's bodies. So, yeah, so a former employee literally released pictures of actual dead bodies to the internet. And in the meeting, the prosecutors noted that they spent 2.5 weeks investigating the leak when they should have been focused on preparing for the trial, so they asked for the date of the trial to be pushed back. And in response, Rozzi said that he saw clips on court TV where anchors had evidence from the case in their hands while reporting, saying that evidence will always be leaked in this case no matter what. So this leak was he was basically saying that the leak from their office didn't really matter. And Rozzi had been quoted saying, "The point here is, I'm going to say maybe a little loosely, but forgive me, I don't care. I don't care all this stuff is out there because it's been out there for 5 or 6 years." Which, releasing pictures of any dead bodies to the internet is horrible and negligent and should never have happened, period. And the fact that they were also children makes it even worse.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, and then Baldwin also agreed with Rozzi, arguing that constant trial delays are violating the Allen's right to due process. The Judge Gull stated that she had concerns regarding Baldwin and Rotzi and the totality of the circumstances surrounding the representation of Allen, reasoning that her dissatisfaction stemmed not only from the evidence leak, but from press releases that potentially violated rules of professional responsibility, and she called Baldwin grossly negligent for sending a sensitive email to the wrong person. Yeah, he sent it to the wrong Brad, specifically. Judge Gull noted that she intended to tell the court on the record that she found that the defense team is negligent about the case and recommended that they be removed from representing Allen. So basically, she's in a private meeting, she said, off the record, these are the reasons why I want you guys to be removed due to negligence. Either you guys can step down and withdraw, or I go on the record and say that I think that you guys should be removed. Your choice, right? Which is why they said that she was basically forcing them into withdrawing. So Rotzi noted, and later Baldwin echoed the announcement to withdraw the representation of Allen, but they did note before withdrawing that they only did so out of need to save their careers, and it wasn't because they or Allen wanted them to withdraw. And even though they made the announcement to withdraw, neither the attorneys or Judge Gull filed with the court about the withdrawal. So technically, on paper, they're still representing. But Rotzi and Baldwin continue to fight to this day to remain on the case and have petitioned the Indiana Supreme Court to reinstate them. And they also, in their position, asked for the Supreme Court to remove Gull and for Allen's trial to occur within 70 days, which at this point has not been granted. Meanwhile, Gull has assigned a new defense team for Allen and moved the trial date from January 2024 to October 2024. So they moved it back to the end of the year next year.
Pushing it back even further, even less timely justice for the family.
Yeah, so
oh, God.
Yeah, and as of right now, Judge Gull have been having a lot of medical issues as well. So she's been in and out of the hospital. So most of her cases have been in the hands of other judges. So that may also be a factor in her being taken off the case. But
yeah, she might have to step down from the bar.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the updates I had, because I thought I saw that the evidence was leaked and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to tell Madison right away.
That's insane. I did not see that. I don't know how I didn't see that.
Yeah, this app is amazing. Because they were all coming out in the same couple days of each other this week, and so every day I kept seeing the Delphi murders stuff, and I was like, okay, gotta read it. So I thought I would update people on the fact that this is pushed back another, what is it, 9 months? It didn't need to be put, in my opinion, it shouldn't have been pushed back that far.
No.
Maybe a couple months, maybe, but not all the way to the end of the year.
Yeah.
So. But yet again, it might have been pushed back that far because of the fact that she's having medical issues. So, not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure about that.
Sure. Another thing, I just also I just kind of pulled it up here. I have not seen the photos, by the way, but it says that they arrested the person who leaked the photos and stuff.
Oh yeah, and he was fired immediately after the release as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry. While you were explaining that update, I was freaking out because I could not find my notes for this case, but we're good.
Well, I'm glad you found them.
They've been found. They just were not labeled what they should have been. They're also labeled episode 13, so it tells you how far.
Shows how far back that you started to do the research.
Yeah. Oops. I've put a lot of effort into this one.
It's good.
I'm ready whenever you're ready to go.
I am ready.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about the War Memorial and Parliament Hill attack that happened in 2014. So first we're going to kind of just talk about the background and the career of the supposed attacker. So the attacker, Michael Zehaf-Bibeau, was a 32-year-old Canadian habitual offender and addiction patient from Montreal. He had been observed by acquaintances exhibiting erratic behavior at the time of the shooting. Zehaf-Bibeau had planned on leaving Canada for the Middle East and was living in a homeless shelter in Ottawa while waiting for the processing of his Canadian passport application. According to RCMP Commissioner Bob Paulson, the passport issue was central to what was driving Zehaf-Bibeau to commit the attacks that we're about to talk about. Zehaf-Bibeau made a video prior to the attack in which he expressed his desire to kill some soldiers and his motives as being related to Canada's foreign policy and in respect to his religious beliefs. I guess, like, to previous friends and stuff and coworkers that he's had in the past, he had expressed his support for jihadists and others in the Middle East resisting the West's intervention. But he wasn't known, like, to the police as, like, a terrorist risk or, like, a terrorism risk or anything like that. Like, at the time, they didn't have him connected to any terror groups or anything of that nature. Like, he wasn't suspected of anything like that.
Okay.
His mom's opinion about the attack was that it was a last desperate act of somebody with a mental disorder who felt trapped. Canadian Muslim organizations condemned the attack. Classified by the RCMP as a terrorist act under the Criminal Code, it was the most serious breach at Parliament Hill since the 1966 Parliament bombings, which we will cover in another case later on in the podcast. The attacks took place on 2 days after a man used his car to run over 2 soldiers in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec, so not Borden. I knew it was one of the military bases that was more well known, but so he had killed one of the 2 soldiers that he had run over with the car. The second incident, which attracted international attention, raised concern about effectiveness of police action to prevent terror attacks, the prevention of radicalization and security measures in place at federal and provincial legislators. So the Canadian government had already prepared a bill to expand the courtroom anonymity and surveillance powers in the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, which is basically Canada's version of the FBI.
Right.
It was actually to be introduced, like the new powers, allowing them to take extra precautions and stuff with what they release and what they kind of can do, was supposed to be introduced the day of the shootings. Yeah, so basically expanded their scope of duties and things. It was obviously postponed as a result of the shootings. So the government then introduced a new anti-terrorism measure with the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2015, and it created the Parliamentary Protective Services that were to aid in guarding the Parliament grounds. Because before there was multiple different agencies and companies that were kind of all contracted in to protect the Parliament and to protect various different things. However, the whole situation kind of brought up an issue of there's a big disconnect between your Parliament constables to your security guards that are employed there to your, so there's just a really big kind of divide. You have 4 organizations offering protection to it. However, they don't communicate with each other. So there's just a big lack of that. So they ended up creating the what we know now as the Parliamentary Protective Services. So they're all highly trained security guards, and I don't know if they're deemed special constables or not. I can't remember, but I actually have a friend who does this job in Ottawa and is a protective services guard.
And
A friend's fiance.
And this is less than 10 years ago this was created?
Yeah, this was created in 2015, so almost 10 years ago now. So we actually just passed the 9th anniversary of this attack, because it was on the 22nd of October, so we just passed the 9-year mark of this attack on the Parliament.
The fact that the security on the Parliament building, which is one of the most important buildings in Canada, was so disorganized in 2014.
Yeah, I mean, I think they thought it was okay because a lot of the people that were there before were constables and like police officers and stuff. But yeah, like there wasn't like a lot of communication, so they kind of needed to make like a central hub of like these are, this is everybody. Everybody under the sun is going to be like a parliamentary protective services officer when it comes to security. We're not going to have four different companies contracted in, as well as the RCMP, the OPP, like Ottawa Police, like all of those things. So
Yeah, it just seemed
um,
like it was like such a huge risk when it like because anybody could just like walk up in a uniform and say that they were part of a different group that was contracted.
yeah, I mean, obviously, like there would be security measures that would have to kind of happen. Like you couldn't just like walk up, but at the same time, it's like the lackadaisical security that was there on the hill. Especially considering like we're talking like a post 9/11 era.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of shocking that they didn't have tighter things after that happened. Like, obviously, I'm sure there was, but not to the extent that it really did much. Like,
Yeah.
wasn't the most effective solution, but obviously, it happens. So, um, yeah. So, security at Parliament Hill is to be stepped up. On June 3rd, 2015, it was reported that RCMP officers had started carrying submachine guns on Parliament Hill as part of a visible increase to Parliament Hill security. So yeah, prior, like they weren't all carrying weapons. Like we'll kind of come to find out um, soon enough. So during Prime Minister Stephen Harper's address on October 22nd, following the shootings, Prime Minister Stephen Harper referred to the October 20th incident as ISIL, so inspired terroristic attack. So the October 20th is the when he drove over the soldiers with his vehicle.
Right.
And then the 22nd is the shootings. So although both attacks led to the death of Canadian soldiers, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police ruled out any direct connection between the attacks. So they never agreed that they were connected initially, but we'll kind of get to that a little bit more. So on October 20th, 2014, Saint Jean-sur-Richelieu ramming attack, Martin Couture Rouleau attacked two Canadian armed forces soldiers. Rouleau was a 25-year-old Quebecois who became a Muslim convert in 2013. He was a supporter of Islam State. Rouleau used his car to run over the two soldiers before being fatally shot by police after a car chase. Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent, who was 53, subsequently died from his injuries. So he was the other soldier that had been attacked.
Right.
The terror threat level in Canada was raised on October 21st to medium in light of the ramming attack and due to an increase in online general chatter from radical groups, including Islamic State and Al Qaeda. So Zehaf-Bibeau was not responsible for the attack on Saint Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec ramming attack. However, I do believe he was later connected through texting with the person responsible.
Right.
So he was kind of like guilty by association, like essentially.
Okay.
So now we're gonna get to the shooting because there's not really much on the ramming attack other than he ran some soldiers down and one of them died as a result of their injuries. So Corporal Nathan Cirillo was on sentry duty at the National War Memorial when he was fatally shot shortly before 10 a.m. on October 22nd. Witnesses saw Zehaf-Bibeau arrive at the National War Memorial carrying a rifle, which was later identified as a 30-30 Winchester Model 94 lever-action hunting rifle. He was seen wearing blue jeans, a black jacket, and a keffiyeh scarf. I don't know how you say that word. Over the lower part of his face. He approached Corporal Nathan Cirillo of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders of Canada. Princess Louise is basically a reserve infantry unit,
Okay.
who was one of the three sentries from the ceremonial guard that was posted at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So there's always people on guard there to protect the tomb of the unknown soldier. So at close range, Bibeau shot Cirillo twice in the back, fatally wounding him. Cirillo, like all who stood before him at the Century Memorial, carried an unloaded firearm and had not been provided any training by the CAF, so the Canadian Armed Forces. Instead of me saying the Canadian Armed Forces a million times, I'm just going to refer to them as the CAF. So he had not been provided any training by the CAF for such a situation to arise. Also, you don't think it's going to happen, but should at least be trained on the off chance it could.
So they hold unloaded guns so that people think that it's protected with a loaded gun.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know.
It's like
I'm not really sure like the logic behind it.
I feel like it's literally just so people think that like, well, they do have a gun, and like you don't know if it's loaded or not, but like you assume that it would be loaded, because why would a police officer carry
But
around
also,
it?
you would if you see like the way they stand with the firearms all day and they stand like super still, like you would assume that it is unloaded. Like to me, like when I see the way they stand and the placement of where the barrel of the gun is and stuff, I'm like, yeah, that probably should be unloaded. I would hope it is,
Oh
because if
well,
it
I mean,
accidentally discharges,
well, yeah, but like, did they have like? I guess you shot in the back, so you didn't see it coming. But at that point, you would assume, I guess, that he would have a cartridge or whatever that he would.
yeah.
But
And I mean, like they stand with like their head looking down, so they're never really like fully looking up either when they're standing guard. So only minutes before the end of the Sentry's shift, so he literally was, yeah, so literally right before they were supposed to get off work, like Corporal Cirillo and the other two at the guard, because their shift ended at 10 a.m. and the shooting happened just before 10 a.m. Like minutes before 10 a.m. It would have been off duty and would have been a different soldier, unfortunately. But so minutes before the end of their shift, Corporal Kyle Button and Corporal Brendan Stevenson, the other two soldiers on duty, attempted to stop him, but they were shot at by him and forced to flee to the other side of the memorial, because again, also had unloaded weapons. Zehaf-Bibeau then pulled down his scarf, held his rifle one-handedly over his head, and yelled, "For Iraq." Corporal Anthony Wiseman, who was nearby, then attempted to stop him, and he attempted to run him over. Three soldiers then attended to Cirillo, along with bystanders who then applied first aid, attempting to resuscitate him, before the paramedic chief, Anthony DeMonte, was first on the scene. He took over patient care until more paramedics would arrive before being taken to the hospital. Zehaf-Bibeau returned to his vehicle, which was a small gray Toyota car, which was parked at the south side of Wellington Street behind the memorial, and he drove west along Wellington, a short distance to Parliament Hill, where he abandoned the vehicle. Bystanders began to scatter. He ran through the gate in the fence surrounding the Parliament Hill precinct and carjacked a parliamentary vehicle assigned to the ministers of the Crown, where he drove to the center block building. RCMP officers on patrol witnessed the carjacking and pursued the vehicle to the base of the Peace Tower. So there's a photograph that circulates, and it's pretty popular. If you type in his name into Google, like this picture will come up. There's a picture of him that was taken by a tourist of Zehaf-Bibeau, that is, at the war memorial during the shootings, and you can see him holding the rifle out, and you see like the scarf covering his face, and you can see part of like the war memorial right behind him. Ottawa police seized the camera that took the photo, and they took their own photo, like they took a picture of the picture on the phone. They seized the camera and took their own photograph. French Canadian journalist William Raymond received a copy of the photograph through the internet, like anonymously, like he just randomly got sent it. And apparently a copy of a tweet that originated from a Ottawa police officer's cell phone. He then took the picture of the image that was displayed on his computer monitor, and he posted it to Twitter a few hours later, confirming the image was that of the shooter that they were looking for. It was retweeted by ISL sympathizers, leading the erroneous media reports that the image originated from an ISIL Twitter account. We'll get into the Parliament. So after the shooting Corporal Cirillo at the memorial, he entered the center block through the main entrance under the Peace Tower, where Samern's son was one of the two constables on duty. Son saw the rifle in his hands and immediately grabbed it and pulled it towards the floor while yelling, "Gun, gun, gun." In the ensuing struggle, Son was shot in the foot and had to let go of the attacker. Other RCMP officers converged on Bibeau. Son limped out of the building and calmly told a CBC reporter outside, "I will survive." Just inside the center block, Zehaf-Bibeau exchanged gunfire with security personnel and was wounded. He then ran along the Hall of Honor corridor toward the Library and Parliament. While being pursued by RCMP officers, he passed on his left the door to a committee room in which Stephen Harper and Conservative members of Parliament were meeting. So, like, he literally, had he got in there, he could have like assassinated the Prime Minister of Canada, but he did not. He just kept going. Obviously, wouldn't have known that they were in that room, but and then directly opposite was the door to another caucus room where leader of the opposition Thomas Mulcair and the NDPs and their members of Parliament were gathered. The Liberals were holding their caucus meeting in a chamber in the basement or downstairs. During the shooting, one bullet penetrated the outer doors of the NDP caucus room, and inside, NDP members of Parliament dove for cover. Across the hall, Harper was briefly hidden in a closet, while Conservative MPs made a barricade at the door, grabbing flagpoles to use as rudimentary spears. Zehaf-Bibeau then reached an alcove by the entrance of the Library of Parliament. He hid out of sight of RCMP officers who ordered him to drop his gun and surrender. The location of the alcove is near the office of the Sergeant-at-Arms of the House of Commons, Kevin Vickers, which Vickers will play a key part a little bit later on in the ultimate resolution to this attack. Vickers was a distinguished policeman, a commander, and an administrator with the RCMP before he joined the House of Commons in 2005. He obtained a 9mm handgun from a lockbox and entered the hall, so he kept a 9mm firearm in his office. Vickers' security team, which had been chasing Bibeau, yelled to Vickers that the suspect was hiding in the alcove. Vickers immediately ran behind the other side of a nearby column, and he dove past the column and fired upwards at Zehaf-Bibeau. Witnesses and reports show that RCMP Constable Curtis Barrett, leading the tactical formation, fired the shot that killed Zehaf-Bibeau after Zehaf-Bibeau had fired in his direction. CBC TV cameras that were on the scene recorded over 30 shots fired in the final gunfight. Footage showed a group of RCMP officers converging near the alcove. Two loud gunshots are heard, and then a large number of gunshots in rapid succession, then silence. Vickers was recorded by CBC video footage walking away from the shooting site, going to the Conservative caucus room. Vickers explained to the Conservative caucus what had happened and reportedly said either, "I put him down," or "I have engaged the suspect. He is deceased." According to Vickers' niece, this is the first time in his career that he has shot anyone. And he spent like 30, I think it was like 30 years or something that he had spent as a member of a police force. And in his career, he had never shot anybody until he started working at
Wow.
Parliament, where he essentially shots at a terrorist attacker.
That's impressive. 30 years in the force without ever having to fire anything.
Yeah, I want to say, I know I have it somewhere in the notes, which we'll get to, but I want to say he spent something like 30 years, I thought it said.
Also,
But
sorry to like go off topic. Have you done a tour of Parliament?
I have done like a tour of like Parliament Hill. And I do believe like when we were younger we did one. I can't really remember. Because obviously I don't live all that far from Parliament Hill, realistically, like few hours, but I've been there many times. I just don't know if we ever went inside. I know I've been in like the Supreme Court of Canada in Ottawa and all that stuff as part of like field trips and stuff and whatnot. I do remember actually, funny enough, we were on Parliament Hill one time and we were standing by like the fire gauntlet that they have out front.
Right.
And I remember a girl in my class and we were just kind of like horsing around and we were just like checking it out and like a random RCMP officer just like walked up and like put handcuffs on us. It was like the funniest thing ever. Like he was just joking around, but it was like super weird. But
Oh my
yeah, there
gosh.
was like so many kids running around Parliament Hill that day. He probably was like, "The fuck is happening?"
Yeah, because
Um, I don't think I've
my
ever done a tour inside of Parliament Hill, to be honest.
because my school, like my elementary school, every second year they would do Ottawa, and then the other year they would do Quebec, and like my group went to Quebec.
Yeah,
But
see,
like I've never
we
been like other than the time where we drove past Parliament Hill, like I've never been like that was the closest I've been to Parliament Hill in my life.
that's funny because I'm actually going not to Parliament Hill, but to the Chateau Laurier in December for a book. There's an author that I really want to meet. He's not like originally an author, but he's done like a few like self-biography books that I'm gonna go and see. So I have to get my ticket and then which I'm gonna book in the next couple days here. And I'll be going pretty close to Parliament. And I figured out the whole parking situation. So next time you're down, I'll take you. So you can see it. But yeah, anyways, it's I don't know if I've been inside, but I don't know if they still do tours. Like for a while they were doing tours of like certain parts of the inside that you could see, but I can't remember if they're still doing that or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just because like you were like talking about like where like the alcove and everything's located in there. I was like, honestly, I don't like. I have no idea. Like,
Yeah,
like
I mean, so like you said your elementary school went like to Ottawa like every second year or like Montreal or whatever. We went to Ottawa every year, multiple times a year. Obviously because we're like,
so close. Yeah.
yeah, Ottawa's a day trip. Like it's nothing, right? Like we'd leave at 8 in the morning and come home for like 6, 7 at night. Like it was nothing. It really didn't matter. And then like we would be the opposite. Like we'd go to Toronto or Quebec every few years.
Yeah,
But
like we
yeah.
even though we were only like an hour or so away from Toronto, like we never really went to Toronto. So
Yeah. No, like our school has done Toronto as a day trip, which is crazy from where we are.
a day trip?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah, we've
gosh.
done it as a day trip, so that yeah. They've done it as like a weekend, like a couple days kind of thing. Like we did Montreal as a couple days. We also did Montreal as a day trip once because we went
Was this when you were in elementary school or was it when you were in high school?
high school.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
your high school class was 8 people, so getting you guys down there only takes two regular vehicles compared to other
No,
people.
like we would do our trips in like big groups, so like the whole high school would go.
Oh, okay.
So there would be
I was like, your
yeah.
graduating class of 8. It's not going to take much to get you guys down there.
Listen, I graduated in class of 8 was pretty cool, okay? Leave me alone.
Well, like
I
I
went to a French
know
school for all those that are wondering like how the heck did you like have such a small graduating class?
one of two
First to
French
live in
schools in a small town.
yeah, I went to a public school and the other one was Catholic. So, but yeah, we lit perks of rural living. All the other schools around where I live are pretty massive graduating classes. It's just I went to school in French and in a rural town, so it's pretty accurate for it to be to be small. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
very true. And like
so
your school also wasn't in like the best location, like it being like downtown and not like on the
so
outskirts or anything like that. Like it makes it a little difficult.
yeah, I mean, we were only there from like grade 5 on. Prior to that, we were in a different building, like a little bit further out. But yeah, at one point we were supposed to build a school, but then the principal that came up with those plans left, and then they just kind of fell, and we never built a school. So would have been cool, but anyways.
Yeah, in high school, my class went to like I didn't go, but they went to the States. I think they went to like Boston and
Okay,
stuff. So like they were out there for like a week or whatever.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, our school was supposed to go to Europe for our high school trip, but just a lot of things and details just kept changing, and it was so disorganized. It just was not was not easy, but anyways. All right, we should probably get back into
Yeah,
it.
yeah, a little derailing.
We can talk about that forever. Yeah. Yeah, so it was the first time in his career that Vickers had shot anyone. Following the shooting, Harper's RCMP security detail arrived and evacuated him while the Parliament buildings were put into lockdown. So now we're going to talk a bit more about Zehaf-Bibeau himself. So Michael Zehaf-Bibeau was born Joseph Paul Michael Bibeau on October 16th of 1982
Oh, he's a
in
Libra.
Quebec City, Quebec. Sure. He was a Canadian and Libyan dual citizen through his father. He was born to unmarried parents, their surname being his mother's last name. But in 1995, his parents legally changed his name to Joseph Paul Michael Abdallah Bulgasem Zehaf-Bibeau to better reflect his heritage.
Okay, but they didn't have to make it 17 names long.
Yeah,
It's like Esteban's name on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yeah,
Like
I can't even say it right now.
Esteban, Julio, Ricardo, Montoya.
Montoya de la Rosa Ramirez or whatever. Yeah. I used to be able to rhyme it off like nothing, but when I'm like smiling or like chuckling a little bit, I can't say something like that. Yeah. To better reflect his heritage, so let's make it 13 pages long. Michael Zehaf-Bibeau was shot and killed October 22nd, 2014 in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. He was 32 years old at the time of his death. So reports put out by Reuters and the US-based networks in the first few hours after the shooting said that the shooter was born Michael Joseph Hall and changed his name after converting to Islam, but these proved to be unreliable and were contradicted the next day by Reuters and major Canadian news sources that were doing in-depth reporting on the case. He grew up in Eastern Canada, including Ottawa and Montreal. His mother, Suzanne Bibeau, a Quebecois from Montreal and a deputy chairperson of a division of Canada's Immigration and Refugee Board. His father was a businessman, Bulgasem Zehaf, a Libyan immigrant to Quebec, who opened a Tripoli cafe in Montreal. Zehaf is reported to have fought in the 2011 Libyan civil war. The Washington Times reported that Zehaf had returned to his hometown of Zawiya in Libya to join the uprising against the Muammar Gaddafi regime. The couple split up before he was born, so his parents split before he was born. But they reconciled a short while after and were married, and then they were divorced by 1999.
Okay, so they were together, and then she was pregnant, but then before he was born, they divorced.
They split up, and then they reconciled later on.
And then they got married again, and then they divorced again in 1999.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
So Zehaf-Bibeau continued to live in the Montreal area until 2007, when he spent time in Libya before moving to Western Canada to become a miner and a laborer. Zehaf-Bibeau became a habitual offender with an extensive criminal record for several offenses, including like larceny, drug possession, parole violations. He had several criminal convictions, and at least one of which resulted in a custodial sentence of 60 days incarceration. In November of 2001, just after his 19th birthday, he was convicted of possessing a false credit card and impaired driving. In 2004, he pleaded guilty to drug possession of marijuana and PCP. He failed to appear in trial in 2006, but appeared 3 years later to plead guilty to marijuana possession. And was given a discharge. So he decided that I'm not going to go to court 3 years later. Let's go to court, and then they just basically suspend the sentence.
Okay.
So, in 2011, he was charged with robbery and uttering threats in Vancouver, but only was convicted on a lesser charge of uttering threats. He claimed that he committed the 2011 robbery so that he would be incarcerated in order to kick his drug habit. He received a psychiatric evaluation, but it was deemed to be fit to stand trial. So he wanted to go to prison so that he could get himself clean off drugs. But drugs run rampant in prisons, so not sure how well.
Well, yeah, they run in prison, obviously. but obviously it would help because it'd be more difficult to get it in typically. But
Yeah.
I mean, he could have had a substance abuse disorder, which,
Yeah.
like, obviously he has no control over, like, his own self and cause him to be dysfunctional and stuff. Like, I could see that, but for that to be a cause of you being ruled as like unfit to stand trial is very, very slim.
Yeah. So now we're gonna get into like his conversion to Islam and like his travel kind of history and stuff. So he was baptized a Roman Catholic and he converted to Islam in 2004, and he had attended Sunni Muslim mosques in British Columbia in the cities of Burnaby and Vancouver. A mosque in Vancouver expelled him because his behaviors were not normal, said David Ali, the vice president of Masjid al-Salal Mosque in nearby Burnaby. He said, "We try to be open to everyone, but people on drugs don't behave normally." There was an acquaintance who recalled that he had erratic behaviors and he had said that the devil is after him and was requested to stop attending the mosque after upsetting some of the religious elders. They believed that he was mentally ill. So, Zehaf-Bibeau wanted to leave Canada. He had supposedly, according to an associate of his, discussed wanting to go to Libya to study Arabic and Islam. Um, at the October 23rd press conference, the RCMP said that his mother told them that he wanted to go to Syria to join the anti-government rebels in the Syrian civil war, but she denied this, stating that she told the RCMP that he was intending to travel to Saudi Arabia. He thought he would be happier in an Islamic country where they would share his beliefs. In a phone interview with his mom, with the press phone interview with his mom, she grieved. She said she grieves for the victims of the attack and not her son. In an email to the press, she also said, "I am mad at my son," and said that he seemed lost and did not fit in. He arrived in Ottawa around this, they said on or before, so around October 2nd to like pursue like securing a Canadian passport because he was a dual citizen, but he didn't have a Canadian passport.
Right.
So, and he wanted to leave Canada, so he needed one to leave. So he had applied for his Canadian passport, and a background check was in progress. Zehaf-Bibeau, who may also have had a Libyan citizenship, applied for a Libyan passport renewal on October 2nd, but was refused the same day.
Well, they went quickly.
Yeah, so he had previously received a Libyan passport in the year 2000, and he had traveled to Libya in 2007. That document had expired, and Zehaf-Bibeau told officials that he wanted a new passport so he could visit family and friends in Libya. So just before the shootings, he was staying at the Ottawa Mission, which is a homeless shelter in Ottawa that is located very close to the Parliament Hill. According to residents that were staying at the mission, Zehaf-Bibeau and two other men had been trying to get a vehicle. Others said he said, you knew they were up to something shifty, pacing around a lot and everything. The vehicle that Zehaf-Bibeau used in the shootings was purchased one day before the shootings. A resident of the mission mentioned that Zehaf-Bibeau's mood changed 3 days before the attacks, and he attributed it to him going back on drugs. He apparently told other residents that he was anti-Canadian and to pray because the world is ending. Another resident reported that he had showed a lot of interest in the Parliament buildings, including asking how easy was it to get into the Parliament buildings. The day before the attack, multiple witnesses saw Zehaf-Bibeau engage in a heated discussion with another man while waiting to register his purchase of the vehicle used in the shootings. According to a witness, Zehaf-Bibeau said, "If soldiers bombed your family, wouldn't you want to kill them?" Staff in the registry office asked him to lower his voice or leave. The purchase was disallowed by the office because of his out-of-province identification. So he would have had like BC
Right.
identifications and stuff.
Right.
And he had only just moved to Ontario not even a month prior. Moved back to Ontario, I should say. The purchase was never registered, and Zehaf-Bibeau posted a piece of junk mail on the car to mimic a temporary license plate, because some provinces, like, they will print you like a temporary license plate and you just tape it on the inside of your window.
Right.
Like, that's how Quebec does their temporary license, where in Ontario, they will give you an actual physical license plate, but you'll get a sticker that has a T on it for temporary tag kind of thing.
Okay.
Obviously, things are different now. I don't know how they do that with not needing a sticker anymore for your plates. I'm not sure if they've gone to paper tags now or not, but
I wonder if like they still have the regular plates, they just don't put the sticker on it, but it's registered in the system as a temporary plate.
yeah, I don't know, because then it would like you wouldn't know if it's actually technically registered or not, because like
Well, I would assume that like
no new plates have stickers now, right, in Ontario, so
no, I know, but like if they used to give you an actual plate and then give you a sticker to put a T on it, right?
yeah, like
Like
the T was on the
if
sticker, but yeah.
no, but like if they just gave you a plate that was like is in the system as a temporary plate, your name would still probably be attached and it would say like your name, your information,
Yeah.
like your name dash temporary. Like
Yeah, no, for sure.
I would assume like I don't know if they would go backwards
Yeah,
and
it's just
do paper, but
it'd be hard to do that just because like with like the temporary tags they used to give with the physical ones and like the stickers, you only have 7 days or something to get it all done. So it'd be hard to tell if it's past their 7 days or not. Like the police would have to run it every single time they see it to see if it's actually registered properly and stuff, which they wouldn't always have the time to do.
which I mean
They have, like,
technically
the automatic license plate reader.
wouldn't that be the same thing with like paper plates? They'd have to run it every single
Well,
time.
they have the paper plates have like an expiry date on them.
Oh. Maybe they
Yeah, they
what
like
if they still do stickers for temporaries? I wonder.
they might. I don't know. I don't know how any of that works because
Obviously,
I have
we don't work for
yeah.
for like Service
I
Ontario or
drive a
anything,
brand
but
new vehicle, so I don't have to worry about it being safe for the roads. Like it is safe. It's in good shape. Yeah, he just did it to mimic a temporary license permit. So it's not clear how he obtained his gun. At the time of the shooting, he was legally prohibited from possessing firearms, uh, or acquiring them. So additionally, his previous criminal charges and convictions, he had a history of drug use. He didn't have a fixed address. All of that would have prevented him from receiving a Canadian firearms license. So he had a lot going for him on to why he could not get a firearms license.
right.
So they're not sure how he acquired the gun. Obviously, pretty easy to obtain an illegal gun if you are in that kind of a scene, like you know people who know people. He also was armed with a knife on the day of the attacks that he had they determined that it came from a relative of his house. Yeah. So after the shooting, so on November 15th, it was reported that his Zehaf-Bibeau's body had remained at the Ottawa coroner's office for examination. According to the procedure to be followed by the coroner, the examination must report the entry and exit wound of each gunshot wound and a toxicology report. So the issue of accepting his body for an eventual funeral was problematic for the Ottawa Muslim Association Mosque. While denouncing what he did as a crime, a terrorist attack against a soldier who was serving the country, we say that if he's believing in God, if he's a Muslim, then he should be buried, said Imam Sami Meltwali. We will give him a funeral service. However, on November 18th, the coroner, in an interview, announced that the body was released over a week ago. The coroner did not release the details of the autopsy when the body was released or whom the body was given to, citing legal restrictions. So essentially, like the Muslim community in Ottawa was going to do a funeral for him and do it like in their faith and his beliefs. However, they were never able to get the body because it had already been put out there for somebody else. And it doesn't say who.
Which is weird because you would think that like if it was his family they would have said like we've already released the body to the family, like even though it's restrictive, like you would think that if it was the family that they would say it was the family.
Yeah, well, so this is the coroner, like this is not the police saying anything, this is just the coroner, so like the coroner would probably have to like let the police release that information.
Right.
Um so on February 26, 2015, the Ottawa Citizen reported that Zehaf-Bibeau was buried in Zawiya, Libya, by arrangements made by his family.
Okay, there you go.
So like a year later, they kind of were like, "Yep, family made arrangements. He is supposedly buried in Libya, but we don't know for sure because, yeah."
Which makes you assume that the body was released to the family then.
So we'll get into the casualties. So we already talked to them, but we'll kind of talk about them a little bit more. So Corporal Nathan Frank Cirillo was born December 23rd, 1989 in Hamilton, Ontario. He was a 24-year-old Canadian soldier who was killed. He was a Class A reservist of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders of Canada from Hamilton, Ontario. He was, as a chosen member of the Ceremonial Guard, on sentry duty at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at the National War Memorial when he was shot. Corporal Cirillo had served for 8 years at the time of his death. Although several civilians immediately provided assistance to the wounded reservist, Cirillo died in hospital later that morning. Cirillo had a standard issue Colt Canada C7 rifle, which, in accordance with standard practice, was unloaded. Samian's son, a House of Commons constable, was injured when Zehaf-Bibeau arrived at the center block. He was confronted by Son, and Son, who was unarmed, was shot in the foot while trying to wrestle the gun away from the shooter. Son's action caused a critical delay and allowed other security personnel to mobilize to stop Zehaf-Bibeau. Son was treated and released that day by the Ottawa Civic Hospital. That I've been inside of.
Yes, yeah.
2 other unidentified people who were injured in unspecified locations were treated and released at the Ottawa Civic Hospital. Cirillo's remains are buried in the very middle of the military section of the Woodland Cemetery in Burlington, Ontario. We're going to kind of get into the aftermath. So, Ottawa's downtown core was put into lockdown while the search began for a potential second shooter. The buildings that they locked down were the Parliament buildings, the University of Ottawa was locked down, and the United States Embassy. So initially, police had reported that there was a third shooting that had taken place near the Rideau Center Mall at the same time. So, and a few hours later, police corrected this mistaken report, stating that only 2 shootings took place. So there was some false reporting and some confusion amidst the chaos.
Weird.
So there was a press conference at 2 p.m. that day. Ottawa police confirmed Cirillo's death without using his name, pending notification of the family, which is pretty standard. They also confirmed Zehaf-Bibeau's death without using his name or details, citing the ongoing investigation. Everything remained on lockdown while the search took place, and remained closed for hours while they searched the building room by room for shooters, and lifted the lockdown on all public schools in and around Ottawa's downtown core around 5:45 p.m. So students weren't able to leave till like pretty much 6 o'clock at night, and they had been at school that entire time in lockdown mode.
Damn.
So Parliament Hill remained on lockdown until well after 9 p.m. And even after the MPs and staffers were allowed to leave the center block, streets directly adjacent to Parliament Hill and the National War Memorial remained closed to the public for the next day. And Parliament Hill reopened to the public on October 20. Okay, so there's kind of our answer. Reopened to the public on October 24th. So 2 days after the shootings, it reopened and allowed members of the public to enter. And Parliament building tours resumed on October 27th.
Okay, so like
they must still do them, but
a week
this
later.
is all I mean. Yeah. So we're just gonna kind of get into the kind of like nationally and internationally kind of like what came of everything.
Right.
So CAF members in Ottawa, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada were told to stay out of uniform when not on active duty. So while members in other parts of Canada were not asked to avoid wearing their uniform. So the military was worried about potential further attacks on soldiers, so they told them if you are not at work, get out of your uniform. Do not wear your uniform, which is crazy because so many people, where I live, wear their uniforms like well after they're off work, and I'm like, why are you still in uniform? Like that's weird to me. But anyways,
yeah, like I
they were told
remember
that
even
that would not have flown back then.
even in Borden, I remember like growing up when I was playing hockey around there. literally, we would go to the Dairy Queen after hockey practice, and we would see like a few soldiers in their uniforms getting Dairy Queen and stuff
Yeah.
on their way home.
Yeah. So further Canadian military bases around the country heightened their security. The incident caused cancellation of a ceremony scheduled for later the same day in Toronto, in which Nobel Peace Prize recipient Malala Yousafzai was to receive her certificate of honorary Canadian citizenship from Stephen Harper. The following measures were taken at the provincial legislature. So Ontario opted to elevate security, but party leaders agreed that they would continue with that session for the day, and they would continue to answer questions that day. Alberta's security was elevated and public tours were cancelled. British Columbia were placed under restricted access, and most constituency offices on Vancouver Island were closed as precautions. Nova Scotia legislators sitting that day was restricted access to in the public gallery to press and staff, so no civilians were allowed. Quebec flew its flag at half-mast as a tribute to Cirillo. In the U.S., there was heightened security at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C., the United States federal government offices, and the tombs of the unknown at Arlington National Cemetery, so also heightened security. Australia and New Zealand increased security at their Parliament House as well as at the Canadian High Commission in Canberra, and security at their Parliament buildings were also heightened. There was a lot of response to the shooting. So initially, the Ottawa Police Service were investigating the shooting at the War Memorial, and then the RCMP were investigating the shooting at Center Block. However, the following day, OPS deemed the situation a matter of national security and turned the investigation over to the RCMP. So then that led the RCMP in charge of both the shootings.
Right.
But because the RCMP also has jurisdiction over Parliament Hill, and that it technically would cause a conflict of interest, so the RCMP, as a result, asked the OPP to conduct the standard independent investigation into the response of the police and security forces. The OPP recalled reports issued by the Auditor General of Canada on the security of the House of Commons and the Senate. While many operational aspects were praised, it was noted that possible jurisdictional confusion could result between the RCMP, the Ottawa Police, the House of Commons Security Services, and the Senate Protective Services, and that no agency had jurisdiction over the roofs of the Parliament buildings. So, none of them technically had jurisdiction, but all of them were working there. So, there was just a lot of confusion surrounding everything and who was responsible for what.
It's just a he said, she said, point the finger at anybody else but themselves.
Well, they all worked there, but neither of them actually technically had jurisdiction. So there's literally technically nothing any of them could have done. But
That's crazy.
so the day after the shooting, Prime Minister Harper pledged to expedite plans to boost security forces' surveillance, detention, and arrest powers, and other members of governments indicated consideration was being made towards anti-terrorism laws. So October 23rd, the RCMP had released a video showing Zehaf-Bibeau's movements across the Parliament Hill precinct. They also announced that he was not one of 93 suspected extremists on the RCMP's high-risk traveler list, though emails written by Zehaf-Bibeau had been found on a computer belonging to an unnamed individual charged with terrorism offenses. So at the meeting, RCMP Commissioner Paulson said that Zehaf-Bibeau's mother had told the RCMP that he wanted to go to Syria, but she denied this, stating that in a recorded interview, she had told them that he wanted to go to Saudi Arabia and not Syria. The RCMP announced on October 26th that they had a persuasive evidence showing the attack had been driven by ideological and political motives. According to RCMP, Zehaf-Bibeau had recorded a video of himself prior to the attack in which Commissioner Paulson alleged that he was quite deliberate, he was quite lucid, and he was quite purposeful in articulating the basis for his actions. They were in respect broadly to Canada's foreign policy and in respect to religious beliefs. The RCMP did not release the video. which they said they were studying for its intelligence and evidence value, but Paulson said they hoped to eventually release the video to the public. Paulson appeared before a parliamentary committee on the 27th of October to brief the members of parliament, and he said, "While we are facing this threat at home, we must focus our efforts on preventing individuals traveling abroad to commit acts of terrorism. Preventing the individuals from traveling is critical. If these individuals return with training and/or battle experience, they pose as an even greater risk to Canada and to our allies." That day, government introduced a bill that broadened the power of CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Services. Among the powers, it would allow them to operate internationally and introduce a program that would allow them to revoke Canadian citizenship to dual nationals who are convicted of terrorism. So in his instance, he would have, had he had his Canadian citizenship, it would have been stripped because he had now been convicted of a terroristic attack. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association urged the government to not overreact. They quoted, "Before we take steps to expand existing police and intelligence power, we need answers about why the powers that we have never used or were insufficient to prevent or avoid recent tragedy." And then on October 29th, Minister Justice Peter MacKay said that the government would work to prevent the promotion of terrorism online. So they would really enforce a lot of cybersecurity stuff. On November 13th, the media reported that security video taken at the center block of Parliament building showed that Zehaf-Bibeau had taken a tour of the building 3 weeks before the attack. That video was not released to the public, so he kind of got a feel for the ground and for the Parliament Hill 3 weeks prior when he decided to take a tour.
Wow.
There was
Nice.
a large knife that was located next to his body after he was killed, and it was reported that, as part of one of the RCMP's working theories, that his actions that he intended to behead someone. So they thought he was intending to cut someone's head off.
Right.
On November 23rd, the government announced that they would unify the various security forces of the House of Commons and the Senate under one command, essentially, which became the Parliamentary Protective Services.
Which should have been a thing to
Um,
begin with, but whatever.
yeah. The existence of the two separate forces had been identified as a point of failure in the incident. Other areas suggested to be addressed was the need for better surveillance equipment, including central surveillance officer, and lack of networking between the forces, including the RCMP. So on December 1st, RCMP Commissioner Paulson said the RCMP would not release the video of his alleged motives, and members of parliament had called for it to be released, claiming that he should not comment on it without releasing it to the public. He said releasing a partial transcript was possible, but they would not release the full transcript because they believed that it led to the identification of a second person potentially involved. So they wanted to make sure that they
Kept that to
got all the
themselves.
information that they needed first before releasing anything, that they would kind of release an altered one. So the same day, CBC News reporter that's reported the center block security video showed that Zehaf-Bibeau had been shot once in exchange gunfire and with common security before running along the Hall of Honor towards the Library of Parliament. December 3rd, Toronto Star, National Post, and the Winnipeg Free Press, so some major newspapers within Canada, called for the video of that the police were withholding to be released to the public. December 17th, Prime Minister Harper suggested that the attacker may not have worked alone, but he never went further into detail. He just basically was like, we don't think he acted alone, and he wouldn't go further into details on why they didn't believe that. In an interview with national television, Harper would not confirm that he was hidden in the closet during the shooting, but said his first concern was to extricate himself from the location, so obviously get himself out of Parliament Hill. And Stephen Harper was quoted as saying, "All you hear is a whole lot of shooting coming towards you, and you don't know if that's a firefight or whether it's just a bunch of guys with automatic weapons wiping everybody out in their path." After the incident, Harper's first call was to his mother to reassure her. The OPP started 2 further investigations into the incident. After October 22nd, the OPP started a review of the RCMP's actions that they took that day on Parliament Hill. October 29th, the House of Commons Speaker asked the OPP to review the conduct of the House of Commons constables and the actions they took on that day. November 24th, the RCMP asked the OPP to review Zehaf-Bibeau's actions from the memorial to Parliament Hill, and then the RCMP will then act on revising its security after reviews are complete. Until that time, the RCMP has increased its numbers around Parliament by rotating new officers in for 2-month terms to Parliament Hill security. It's kind of like a short-term posting for some people. Well, for essentially that's how they do it now, so that they're not stuck there forever. Because
Yeah, it's a long.
oftentimes there's not really much going on at Parliament Hill. Like obviously there's security, but like it's not like the States. Like every people are free to go up on Parliament Hill, and they do light shows in the summer there. They do like various activities happen on Parliament Hill. 420, everybody goes and sits on Parliament Hill and gets high. Like that's normal
Yeah.
in Canada. Like, you're able to do those things. So
And it's
they
also
do it as like
a
2-month terms.
it's also a long time to just stand on your feet doing absolutely nothing and just like looking at people.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it's not a job that
Um
people would want long term.
yeah. So the OPP report was released on the internet with redactions. So for anybody who doesn't know, redactions is just they released the report, but there's certain information that has been blacked out. Just basically that can help their case just so that they're not able to release everything, but they released what they could essentially of it. On February 24th of 2015, the Canadian House of Commons Public Safety Committee passed a motion to invite RCMP Commissioner Paulson to publicly display and discuss the video that Zehaf-Bibeau had recorded at a future meeting of the committee. So Commissioner Paulson showed the video minus 18 seconds, which the RCMP said might be pertinent to investigations into accomplices. So at the Public Safety Committee, that was held on March 6th. So they withheld 18 seconds of that video. I'm going to read to you. I wish I could play you the video, but I don't know how to do that. But
I think you can share screen and it might.
I'm just gonna read it. I think it'll just be easier because
Yeah, which is fair as well.
What I'm about to read is what he says in the video. And this video, it's him sitting in his car right before the attacks on the War Memorial and the Parliament Hill that morning. And I have watched this video. This video is all over the internet. You could look it up and find this video probably fairly easily because it is everywhere now. So he is quoted as saying, "This is in retaliation for Afghanistan and because Harper wants to send his troops to Iraq. Canada's officially become one of our enemies by fighting and bombing us and creating a lot of terror in our countries and killing us and killing our innocents. So just aiming to hit some soldiers just to show that you're not even safe in your own land. And you got to be careful. Will not cease until you guys decide to be a peaceful country and stay to your own and stop going to other countries and stop occupying and killing the righteous of us who are trying to bring back religious laws in our countries. Thank you." So that video was recorded in a car in Ottawa on the day of the shooting and was found in the car that was abandoned in front of the Parliament. So RCMP Commissioner Paulson said he believes that someone else was involved, and if they were found to have helped Zehaf-Bibeau, that they would be charged with terrorism offenses. Postmortems for drugs and alcohol were negative, and that he had a long knife tied to his wrist when he was killed by Parliament Hill security. The aftermath. So Paulson further briefed Parliament that the RCMP has over 130 full-time investigators and staff on the case. So while they investigated, they had 130 people who all they did was investigate what went on Parliament Hill that day and into this individual.
That's a lot of
So
people.
So he reiterated the RCMP's position that Zehaf-Bibeau was a terrorist under Section 83.01 of the Criminal Code, and that he would have been charged with terrorism offenses had he survived the incident. OPP investigators also possessed a security video taken inside the Parliament building when Zehaf-Bibeau was killed. So they have it on, they have film of him being shot and killed. The RCMP did not determine the source of the gun that he used. They found witnesses that saw him loading it into his car. On May 29th of 2015, the RCMP released the full transcript of Zehaf-Bibeau's video, so the one that I just read to you. The missing 18 seconds included him asking God to praise his actions and curse those he is targeting. So had nothing to do with accomplices whatsoever in the end. We'll just talk about his death a little bit. In June of 2015, the CBC reported some information from the OPP report. They reported that he was hit 31 times by police, including a shot to the back of the head by RCMP Constable Curtis Barrett, after which the RCMP stopped firing. He was then handcuffed. Although he was already dead, Vickers himself shot 15 times after entering the center block. There was an exchange of gunfire between Zehaf-Bibeau and House of Commons Security Corporal Malo. Zehaf-Bibeau then ran down the Hall of Honors, where House of Commons Security Constable Louis Letourneau shot at Zehaf-Bibeau 15 times, hitting him once, an event that was recorded on center block security video. 4 RCMP officers advanced on Zehaf-Bibeau, who took one more shot, narrowly missing on RCMP Constable Barrett. He then started a barrage at Zehaf-Bibeau. The OPP reported that concluded that officers' actions were all justified. The OPP report also contained information that it was determined that Zehaf-Bibeau shot Corporal Cirillo 3 times in the back at the War Memorial, not twice as it was previously reported. In October of 2015, CTV News reported it had obtained an unredacted copy of the OPP report. In it, it was reported that 4 RCMP officers were involved in the shootout that ultimately took Zehaf-Bibeau's life. Those officers were Constable Curtis Barrett, Constable Martin Fraser, Sergeant Rick Rosen, and Corporal Danny Daigle. According to CTV News, the constables were told after Kevin Vickers was applauded for his actions that the Kevin Vickers train has left the station, but you guys will get internal recognition. So essentially they were like, you guys will get credit for your actions, but we'll do it internally and we're not going to do it out in public, but Kevin Vickers will get the out in public recognition for everything. Recognition was to include a commissioner's commendation and recommendation for a Governor General's award. According to CTV, the officers did not receive the commendations and they were on stress leave. Barrett would eventually be recognized after his involvement in the shooting was confirmed and previously lost. So basically they were like, we have no record of you being involved in this incident whatsoever. So he was told he was going to get his commendation, and then they're like, what, you weren't even involved. Why do you need a commendation? Like, you weren't involved in this.
Okay.
So
weird.
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police established Project Savvy to proactively look for threats to Canadian security in open source media, including social networks. So we kind of touched on base on that a little bit earlier. And then now we're just kind of gonna get into like who were they and where are they now? So like the RCMP officers that were involved, the 4. So Constable Curtis Barrett joined the Canadian Army. So this one actually kind of hits close to home a little bit, and you'll see why. I mean, Ottawa in general, close to home, but Curtis Barrett joined the Canadian Army in 2000 and served as a combat engineer in the 2nd Combat Engineer Regiment in Petawawa until 2004.
Damn.
Before joining the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So this guy served very close to my home and lived very close to me for 4 years while he served in our military.
Which, I mean, Petawawa is like one of the major bases in the country, but
yeah, Petawawa is like one of the larger bases,
and one of the oldest.
Yeah.
It was around before World War One, which is crazy.
That I didn't even know that. I do know, like, we do have a military museum here, so like there is one in Petawawa. So I've never been to it though.
Neither have I.
But On October 26th of 2016, Constable Barrett was awarded the Star of Courage for His Excellency. The Right Honorable David Johnson, the Governor General of Canada, presented him with this award. It was created in 1972. Decorations for Bravery recognize people who risk their lives to try and save or protect the lives of others. The Cross of Valor recognizes the acts of the most conspicuous courage in circumstances of extreme peril. The Star of Courage recognizes acts of conspicuous courage in the circumstances of great peril, and the Medal of Bravery recognizes acts of bravery in hazardous circumstances. Barrett was put on medical leave and sent to a mental health clinic in Ottawa, where he was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. He has become an advocate for transforming how the country's largest police service supports its officers after traumatic events. When checking in a year after the incident, the RCMP had no record of Barrett being involved in the shooting. So they were like, "What are you talking about? Like you weren't there. Like why are you saying you were there?" So all the psychologist reports were lost. He said, "How are you supposed to sign me back to work when you don't know that I was involved in a shooting?" So he was like pretty like amped up and pretty upset about that. Like he has to go get signed back to go back to work. However, he can't be because they're claiming he was never involved in a shooting. But like then why was he off work?
Right?
So
Yeah. Like, who signed for him to
yeah.
be off? Like, right? Like, that's the question. Because,
Yeah.
like,
Well, he was sent to well, why would he be sent to a mental health facility if he wasn't involved in a shooting or like anything like that? Like where, like the pieces kind of like don't really fully add up, but
again,
anyways,
the government entities not wanting to take responsibility for the people in their
yeah.
that are giving their lives and everything for them. It's sad, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So 18 months later, he returned to work as part of the RCMP's bomb unit. Once they found his paperwork is when he was diagnosed with PTSD and sent to a mental health facility. He indicated it helped him a lot and it works 90% of the time for him. Obviously there are still moments where it doesn't, but he did say that like getting that help was huge for him and it really benefited him and helped him out immensely.
It's good.
He did not return to active duty until June of 2016. So he was off for obviously over a year, and then between being getting medical care and treatment for everything, he didn't return fully to active duty until 18 months later in June of 2016.
Wow.
And then so Corporal, yeah, so Vickers was the sergeant at arms. So I'm just gonna kind of read the following. This is like the last little bit that I have. Just basically the medal slash like awards that the officers got because I was not able to find like where some of these other officers were now or anything.
Naturally.
So yeah,
Seeing
I
as they're
mean,
still alive, probably still
but
somewhat in
sometimes
duty or
like they'll
not.
say
But
like when they do like anniversary pieces, sometimes you'll hear from those officers or you know other things may have come about, but it does appear I wasn't able to locate any obituaries for any of them or anything, so they should all still be alive,
yeah.
which is a good sign. But yeah, so I'm not sure where the rest of them are, but Curtis Barrett is one who's more well known because of his advocacy for better care for officers after traumatic events. So,
Which naturally, I mean,
uh,
that should have just been common sense to
yeah,
organizations, but I
so
mean, regardless.
so the following officers got the Star of Courage as a result of this. So RCMP Corporal Danny Daigle, Constable Martin Fraser, Constable Louis Letourneau, RCMP Sergeant Richard Rosen, Constable Salmon Sun, Sergeant at Arms Kevin Vickers. Medal of Bravery was awarded to RCMP Constable Michelle Bergeron, RCMP Constable Gary Bublis, RCMP Constable Samoza Celestin, Corporal Maxim Mallow, RCMP Constable Sylvie Marcoux, RCMP Constable Michael Palmer, RCMP Constable Patrick Roost, Constable Charles Tom, and Constable Herbert Way. So those were the awards that they got, but they had to fight to get them because they're like, yep, we're gonna recognize you guys internally, but it wasn't until like 18 months to like 2 years later that they were actually recognized for their dedication and their actions that took place on that day.
Well, obviously, they lost all the paperwork.
Yeah, right?
Hoping that they would
So
just say, like, it's not worth fighting for or advocating for.
that is all I got. It is a huge case.
It's
It took me weeks to do those notes, to be honest.
I bet like that was like a lot of facts, like where I felt like my brain like kind of exploding inside.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but like when you were reading off all the names of the people that like got awards and stuff eventually, that like during this time like I was just starting high school. Wait, no, I was going into grade 10.
I would have just been starting grade 12.
Yeah. So like I was going into grade 10, and like I don't remember anything from grade 10. Grade 10 honestly felt like a fever dream. Like I don't remember anything from that year. Like not a thing. So, but like I don't remember this occurring at all. Like yet again, I've never been one to watch the news. So like realistically, like I'm not surprised that it kind of like fell through the cracks for me, but yeah, like even like now that like I've looked up his name because like I looked it up at the beginning when you were talking, like I definitely recognize the spelling of the name. So I've definitely seen something about him before, but I've never like actually like looked into like what it was. I'll probably watch the video of him in his car or whatever after because I want to see that like the way that he said it and like his body like
he says it like so he honestly just sits there and like says it so calmly like it's nothing,
which is the most scary in my opinion because like the fact if he's like calm about it, which means that he had a rational thinking behind it, which is worse than it being a passionate one in my opinion,
for sure.
Wow. So the guy that ran over with the car though, so yeah, how was he eventually connected?
So there was a few things that said like I think the communication between Zehaf-Bibeau and him were either via email or through going to the same religious like mosque kind of thing. Forget how exactly it was. I thought it was part of my notes, but apparently not.
I mean, unless you said it and like my brain no longer remembers it, like I don't remember you talking about how it was connected, but
Did say it was gonna come up soon later in my notes, but it did not.
But I do remember you saying that they were in some form of communication. Also, like imagine he did end up getting his passport.
Right.
Like, do you think if he did get his passport and he went to the Middle East or wherever he decided he wanted to go, whether it was Libya, Saudi Arabia, or whatever, like, do you think that it would have been an even worse terrorist attack, like a bigger one, or do you think that it wouldn't?
So I think that like yes. So like yes and no. So I think that it would have been eventually. I don't think that there would have been an attack so soon. I think he would have possibly like gone home, learned, and then possibly kind of recreated another, not necessarily recreated, but maybe tried or attempted to make another 9/11 style attack, like to that magnitude, I mean.
Right.
So I think that if he would have made it back, like there's potential that he would have tried to plan and carry out a much larger scale attack on possibly like place like Saint Jean sur Richelieu, where that's where all our Canadians that join the military go for training, for like basic training. That's where a lot of people, and there's always a lot of cadets and stuff there. So I think it would have still been an attack eventually, potentially, but just I think to a much larger scale than what he was able to accomplish. And the fact that he only was responsible for killing one person. I think he would have done it to a much larger scale.
Yeah, it also makes me wonder, like, because the way
Especially
that
considering at the time he wasn't on their radar like whatsoever.
that's
Like
true.
to them he was just like this guy down on his luck and just, where the other guy, Martin Rouleau, was on one of the
90s,
93
90 something,
people
yeah.
on a terroristic list. Like he was one that they were aware of and were watching.
Another thing was, it was in my head, now it's gone. Oh my gosh. Poof. No longer exists. Oh yeah, the fact that, like, because, like, I also saw the pictures of, like, the way that he was dressed and stuff, like pictures of him when he was doing the shooting and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it was very clearly a suicide, like, attack, right? Like there was no way he was making out of there. Like, he didn't attempt to, like, conceal who he was. He was very open with who he was. And, like,
Yeah.
I almost feel like, because when he applied for the Libyan passport, and it was, like, literally denied the same day.
Yeah.
Do you think that, like, because of how long it was taking for Canada to actually go through the entire processing, he was like, okay, well, they're not going to give it to me, so you know what, like, fuck these guys, they won't let me do what I want to do. And then that was, like, the trigger to officially do it on that, like, or, like, almost like a trigger that he feels like he had to do it right then, right there.
Um, yeah, like I don't know, because like he had he did have like a Libyan passport. He just had applied basically for its renewal, which was denied. Canadian passports have always taken a long time. Like Canada has always been super diligent about like the background checks and all the hoops that you have to jump through to gain stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with him having no fixed address and stuff, like his situation, had he stayed in Vancouver a little bit longer, like he could have ended up with a passport because he at that point would have had valid ID, a fixed address, and like all those things. So I think like him going to Ottawa to like try to expedite his passport process didn't help him because it left him with a lot more questions and red flags to potentially find.
Yeah, kind of like, why do you need to, like, why is it so important for you to get it, like, as soon as possible?
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
like you can pay to expedite it, but you've now moved yourself to Ottawa and you are now homeless. Like I don't know how many homeless people have passports or like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah, because
I
if you
just
don't if
feel
you don't
like
have a house, like,
like
where are you getting the money
where
to go in the first place, I guess, right?
where are you getting the money to go, but also where are they sending your passport for you to get? Because you're not gonna be anywhere necessarily either,
Right.
right? And like to when they do mail your passport, like it comes and you have to sign for it when you receive it, and you have to show ID that like you are who you say you are. So it's like there's just a lot of hoops that like him moving to Ottawa kind of prevented him from doing. So I don't know. Obviously, he wasn't in the right frame of mind, but just I don't know if he took any of that into consideration or if he just genuinely had no idea that it was that much of a process to get a passport here.
Well, yeah, like, it seems like, because he already had a Libyan one, he didn't think it was going to, like, maybe he probably thought it would expedite the process because he was already approved for one,
Yeah.
like, previously. This is why Canada has a long one to begin with.
Yeah, unless you're me, I literally applied for my passport this summer, a couple days before I flew out on vacation with Savannah, and literally we had like just landed in Alberta, and the next day my mom had texted me and was like, "Your passport's in," and I was like, "What? Like, what do you mean my passport's in? Like, I literally applied for it 3 days ago, and I had my passport."
Well, clearly you
And I
have
was
no
like,
red flags or yellow
yeah,
flags.
yeah, apparently I had no flags whatsoever. All green flags, so it was good to go. Obviously, previously held a passport, but like,
I
and it
mean, as a
also helped
child,
when,
but
yeah, But I mean, like, also, like, helps when all your stuff is done properly and there's, like, no errors, so there's no reason for them to send it back and redo, like, papers and send it right back and playing that game. So
Right.
I just got really fortunate because, like, especially during COVID, like, people were putting in for passports and it was taking them, like, 6, 7 months to get their passports. And some of them were just renewals, and it was still taking them, like, that long. So the fact that it took me 3 days to apply for a passport, submit everything, like, and only took 3 days, and I had it in the mail, like, it was crazy. Like, had it at home physically, it was crazy.
The passport stuff reminds me of the great passport fiasco of early COVID when Dad and Melissa went to
Oh my
Florida.
god, yes. The whole Florida fiasco. That's funny.
It's funny because like before COVID, like she used to go to the States like a lot, like to visit like friends, and her friends would go on like hiking trips and stuff. So like I understand why she wouldn't have even thought to have looked at the expiration date on her passport.
Yeah.
But of course, this is a trip that they were planning for like almost the entire year, and within a month of them leaving, she realizes that it's expired.
Yeah. I remember the whole ordeal.
I remember my dad was so mad because like it was like the first time he was going to be like leaving the country since like he was like in his early 20s. So like
Well, that and, like, she's the one who's, like, always, like, a planner and on top of all of that, so the fact that she wasn't, like, is kinda funny.
yeah,
I
because she usually always has like their paperwork like very like neat and organized and stored away properly. Like
Yeah.
they're both pretty good with that, but they're just like he's just like well like obviously I made sure that mine was in order, and you'd think that she would have made sure that hers is in order. Then like it was just
Especially because she's, like, such a like, she's traveled a lot, like, she but anyways.
yeah, it was funny though. It's funny now in retrospect that it's over and they went and came back.
Yeah.
That's the end of episode 17. If you'd ever like to get in contact with us, you can email us at worstcasemacchiato@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram or TikTok at worstcasemacchiato. You can refer any cases to us, which we've already had a couple that we're working on, and you can also message us about any updates, just like I did with the Delphi case today, or just to give any personal experiences, just let us know. And like always, we'll see you in the next one. Bye!